Hello! And welcome to episode 31 of Modern Media Review, the podcast that prefers the old-style wax cylinders for listening to music. Never mind all this trendy vinyl cartridge and cassette stuff. But we do record digitally in the internet, just for sheer convenience, really. And it's easier to distribute than the wax cylinders, if anyone remembers them.
Always a difficulty.
I'm Robin Gibson.
I'm Sean Gollogly.
And this is part 2 of our Nostalgia Fist, as you put it last week, Sean.
It was a nostalgia fist. And actually, Robin, I'm quite nostalgic for episode 30 already.
Yes, a different sort of nostalgia. Anyway, to hell with it, Sean. We'll do the plug-in at the start this time. If you like the podcasts, we're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Twitter, Facebook, and all that stuff. And obviously, any likes, comments, subscribers would be great. And we should also mention that our brilliant illustrator, Rowan Talent, is away with his talent for a bit. That's why you're getting a plain red flag instead of a brilliant caricature on these two podcasts. Which is a shame, but he'll be back.
He will be back. I was actually thinking, just on this whole nostalgia for episode 30 of our podcast, is that I'm thinking of booking out the Royal Albert Hall and doing a 3-week anniversary rendition of it. What do you think?
Do number 30 and 31 together.
Possibly, yeah, double header.
Performed in full at the Royal Albert Hall. It's a great idea. Obviously, we're quite UK-centric here, but for the US take on nostalgia and summer camps, which, going by our US correspondent Ben Diamond's stuff, seems to be all that people do in the US summer camps, apart from
yeah,
drive-bys and crack and that sort of thing. He's on the website, which is modernmediareview.com, with his Proustian remembrance of things past in summer camps.
I always thought you picked me up on this because I thought maybe it was remembrance of thongs past, but
no, that was just a mistype.
Okay. Well, that's a whole different podcast, isn't it?
Into it, which we won't be doing.
But certainly not.
The podcast called Specials Syndrome, and what sparked this? It's about music, really, isn't it, Sean?
Well, it's a bit more than music, Robin.
Special syndrome is actually a term that a music promoter acquaintance of mine told me a few years ago. It's a phenomenon, a modern phenomenon where reformed bands from the 70s, 80s and 90s attract a certain shape of person, a middle-aged 15-stone ex-gig goer who's now reverted to going to gigs. And they fill the venues too full because the actual capacity of, say, a 2,000-person venue is calculated on
body mass.
Modern, normal-shaped people. So all these guys turn up. They sell the right number of tickets, but when you get in,
no one can fit in.
You can't breathe, which has happened to me a couple of times. And the Specials are apparently the worst example for this, which is probably understandable because they're a bit of a blokes band, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little bit like when you're on a Ryanair or EasyJet flight and you're paying your £2.50 to fly to somewhere that's not really close to where you wanted to go.
Yes,
and you sit down in your thin little seat and some rotund person, you see them walking up the aisle and you just have this, please not next to me. And it always is.
Yeah, wearing a Specials t-shirt, probably.
Who you've met the 2 weeks before at the Specials 40th anniversary reunion gig.
Well, what I wanted to say was I've not got any kind of contempt for the actual bands. I mean, I don't mind them earning a few bob in their twilight years. What got me with this was the ads in the rock magazines, the niche mags you have now, like Uncut and Q and Mojo and stuff like that, and Record Collector. When I looked at the live ads, it was completely bizarre. It seemed like you were in a total time warp. Some floating point between, say, 1970 and 1990. And this was a real Proustian vibe, you know. It was the pre-internet era. All these artists still playing. When you saw them originally in those eras, you'd never have expected they'd still be going now with more and more people going to see them. And it's like a real time machine into a kind of murky world, you know, where everything was pretty crap, really, wasn't it? There was no internet. The floor of all the venues was sticky and the sound was bad.
hang on, this is all sounding brilliant to me. As you know, I used to buy the music press, and it's quite strange because when we mooted the idea of doing this one, I went back in and perused the shelves of my local newsagent. And whereas everything used to be pretty mucky, you got your fingers dirty reading the likes of Sounds, Melody Maker, and I wasn't a big NME fan, but with this, it's all massively glossy, but exactly the same bands.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You're in a completely mental time warp. And I was looking at some of the ads. I mean, I went through to get some of the ads, and some of them just blew my mind. I mean, I guess there are some people around, like, I don't know, Hawkwind doing their 50th anniversary tour, where I'll give them a pass because they've never kind of stopped, have they? They're a bit like the Fall or the Rolling Stones. They just kept going. But some of these reformed things just blew my mind, like Cast. I mean, who really remembers Cast? Their current thing is performing their three classic albums over 3 nights. I mean, I don't remember one classic album. Could you even name a Cast album?
I guess you could push, say, 3 classic singles.
You can't even name them. You can't even... It's hardly Led Zeppelin 4 or Definitely Maybe, is it? Or Never Mind the Bollocks. 3 classic albums. And then there's this other phenomenon with ex-members of bands performing the band. My favourite current one being Glenn Hughes performing classic Deep Purple at Cheltenham and Middlesbrough Town Hall. I mean, Glenn Hughes was just one of about 329 bassists who played for Deep Purple, wasn't he? He's hardly the quintessential Deep Purple.
And talking about nostalgia, you know that I'm a big fan of Sky Arts and BBC4.
Yeah.
There were a couple of documentaries on. One was about Deep Purple, and obviously the classic lineup being the Mark II lineup of Gillan, Blackmore, Pace and Glover, of which Glenn Hughes is... and Lord, sorry.
Yes.
Lord. How could I forget Lord? But, yeah, Glenn Hughes didn't really figure.
No, he only joined in the latter era when they sacked a couple of people and brought in him and David Coverdale, and then Richie Blackmore said he wasn't playing any of this shoeshine music. Kind of betrayed his true character, really.
Well, there was a bit of a theme with some of these 70s guys and shoeshine music, although they made a lot of money out of it.
Yes, Eric Clapton being one. But I think we're digressing there a bit. I mean,
we are digressing.
We've got every right to call Eric Clapton an ex-drunken racist, but we'll leave that one for the time being. I like the Cheltenham Town Hall thing. I thought, I wonder if the mayor will be there.
Well, yeah.
Mind you, mayors wear chains, don't they? They probably prefer rap. But also, there's another one like that, Steve Hackett, again, hardly the name of Genesis, who's plodding around playing classic Genesis on his own, apparently.
I don't even know who Steve Hackett is.
The guy played the triangle or something in Genesis. And then you got Sweet. There's a picture of Sweet going on tour. Now, I don't know how many members of Sweet, who were a great band in their day, are left. It's hard to say from the blurry picture if any of them are original members.
I doubt it very much. Well, I was just going to say, with bands like this, when people are actually buying their tickets to go and see, for instance, The Sweet, they're not actually buying it to go and see The Sweet. It's a whole different vibe for them, because what they're doing is recapturing youth, surely.
How on earth could you recapture youth by going to see this group of middle-aged blokes playing at the... Now, I can't read this properly. It's very small print.
Well, this is another one of my problems with these magazines, and I'd like to think that my eyesight isn't failing too badly, but it seemed to me like Shindig and Record Collector, which were two of the ones that I was looking at this week for the podcast. I think the font size must be 0.4.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. They're playing at Clitheroe Grand.
Ah, what a classic venue.
And then there are these poignant sort of festivals with lots of bands who probably can't quite do it on their own. One of them's the Madness Festival, which is fair enough. They've been doing that for a while. But they've got Space, who were a fairly popular group, who found themselves below the bootleg Beatles on the bill.
That's a tough one to take.
Complete desperados who don't need to do this, like Midge Ure doing the 1980 tour, playing the complete album of Vienna.
Oh my God.
With highlights of Visage. It's just all completely mind-bending.
I think it was bad enough Ultravox first time round. I'd have preferred a bit of John Fox, maybe.
The John Fox Ultravox were very good. And then I got to the stage where I was trying out, like you, a few of these mags, and I couldn't even bring myself to buy Mojo this month because the artists on the cover were David Bowie, Bob Dylan, Neil Young and the Beatles. I mean, is there anything left to write about these people?
Well, I think Bob Dylan is one of these breakthrough artists, isn't he?
Yeah, he was, yeah.
What? Not now, no?
No, not really, no. It's breakdown artist now, isn't he? The most in-jokey and obnoxious and least enjoyable of all these magazines used to be Q. And I picked up a copy of that, which had the specials on the front. But then when I opened it, I found all this urban music inside. Like Heady One, a drill star.
Yeah, I saw that.
Wiley and AJ Tracy. What on earth is going on with Q? And it's got very thin, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has.
I don't think this experiment's working.
A bit like Quality Street tins, which have become a little bit small but are twice the price of what they used to be.
Well, there was something in the news about Quality Street, wasn't there?
Yeah.
It's shrinking.
It is, yeah.
They think they can con you like that, don't they? Making it smaller but keeping the price the same.
No, they've raised the price, believe it or not.
And they're having more toffee and less sweet.
Correct.
Or is it the other way around?
No, more red ones. You know those ones that everyone leaves, like strawberry creams.
I like those. They're having more of that. I'm going to get some.
Mate, that's going to be like pay dirt for you then.
But anyway, Q didn't have any adverts for these old farts, did it?
No.
So what made, and then you've got, like, there's a sort of hierarchy of bands. This year I've noticed there's a sort of top level, like the ones who play, like, big arenas, stadiums, like Steely Dan and the Eagles, and Daryl Hall and John Oates.
Oh, classic stuff.
And these guys are playing huge venues, aren't they? And they've probably got new teeth, and there might be well-revived original members there because they can afford the medical bills.
Well, don't forget our good friends Bros. They came back at the O2.
But they seem positively modern compared to these people.
I mean, I wonder if they have to do the gig as a matinee before, obviously because bedtime must be a little bit earlier. Gone are the days of, gone are the days of partying at the, the LA Hilton.
I mean, that's the other thing. These guys are past all that. So the actual fun side of being in the band has gone out of it. Now they're just doing it for the music, aren't they?
Which is a bit boring, really.
Yeah, well, you've got the top level of that, and then you've got a sort of middle level which play like middle venues, like Mott the Hoople and Steve Hackett, as I mentioned earlier, playing Genesis and 10cc, and then there's this bottom sub level, right, where which we've noticed obviously over the years being racing fans. They play at race courses. People like the Human League and ABC. They can't, and often these ones play together because they can't quite muster a crowd of their own. So you get weird matchups like the Human League and Belinda Carlisle, which doesn't make any sense at all.
The one thing I did notice going through Record Collector, which I quite smiled at, to be honest, was a release. It was in new releases reviews, and it was Bay City Rollers, the singles collection.
Yes, well, that's an exciting new release, isn't it? Who on earth wants that?
Well, if your Bay City Rollers record collection was missing one thing, it's probably a new edition of their singles.
The thing is, I don't think the Bay City Rollers... I mean, I suppose they've got a slight bit of credibility because the Ramones used to name-check them as an influence, but no one actually listens to the Bay City Rollers, do they?
I have no idea.
Well, this is the problem with all this thing. I don't know if people are really listening. They're just buying these vinyl records and putting them on their shelf, and apparently a large number of the vinyl purchasers don't actually play the records. They just display them.
Well, it's a bit like Spinal Tap, isn't it, where he's looking at the guy's guitar collection and he says, don't touch them. Don't even look at them. This is a bit like... The other thing that made me smile about Record Collector was that at the very back of it, they've got their stockists for vinyl and the like. Now, the font size for the main part of the magazine is tiny, but this must have been on 2-point.
Oh, yeah, it's like the phone book. It's the nostalgia for the phone book, isn't it? It's something you can get a magnifying glass out and pore over for hours. But another thing I was thinking was, when I just mentioned about the ticking off thing, about I've never seen them, I'll go and see them, is that in these magical ad pages, there now is an almost indistinguishable joining up of real bands and tribute bands. So beside Mott the Hoople, who are really Mott the Hoople, you've got Guns 2 Roses, who've just got the same logo but with a 2 instead of an and Clearwater Creedence Revival, which is just completely confusing, and Pearl Jam UK. And you don't know it's not the real bands until you see they're only playing at the Clitheroe Ballroom and not Wembley.
Well, I'm not unfamiliar with this because there was a time when I was playing five-a-side and I'd left me trainers at home, and I popped into this sort of like market which was near the venue, and all they had was this pair of what looked like Reeboks, and I thought, oh, for Christ's sake, for one night these will do. What I should have realised was that they were fake, obviously, but they were called Roboks. Slightly different, slightly inferior.
Exactly the same thing. And I also noticed when we talked about the specials and we've called the podcast after it, I got an email the other day from some music firm promoter saying, come and see the specials limited. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the actual specials are still on tour, but there's clearly a big market for a tribute band as well.
Was that a limited time to see them, or limited musicians, or limited to no members of the actual lineup?
And then you've got this phenomenon where I read this article years ago about tribute bands where there was an Arctic Monkeys fan. They were talking about an Arctic Monkeys tribute band, and this kid was saying, "Yeah, this is at the time when the Arctic Monkeys had become a sort of almost a stadium or at least an arena band." He's saying about the tribute band. He said, "Yeah, but the thing about these guys is they're better than the Arctic Monkeys." I thought, that's just twisted logic. They might be better at playing the Arctic Monkeys music like it is on the record, but they're not they can't. Only the Arctic Monkeys can be the Arctic Monkeys, can't they? It's an existential thing.
It seems not, Robin. As you see from all these likes again, I know you're going to pick me up on this, but Bjorn again, say.
Yeah, but they're a bit different because they were the originators of the whole thing, Bjorn again. They were a sensation when they came out. They were the first tribute band. They looked like the band. They talked in Swedish accents and they sounded perfect.
Well, this was the whole point, and I must admit that when you were talking earlier about ticking off bands that you hadn't seen, you'd like to have seen at the time, I went down to see Public Enemy down your way.
Yeah, well, and Bjorn again were supporting them, yeah?
They were supporting, yeah. Followed by Eric Clapton and the Bootleg Beatles. But it was funny looking at that crowd because I met you at the Trinity for a pint, didn't I?
Yeah.
And you were basically saying, well, this is going to be an interesting audience. And it was, really. It
was completely white.
Yeah, basically.
And middle-aged.
Yeah, and middle class, I would say.
Because the people who liked Public Enemy in the first instance had moved on to modern music.
In fact, at the bar, I think I was standing next to David Cameron.
Well, we won't mention him this week. We might do next week. And another example of that was when I was dragged down to see some Clash tribute band in Glasgow, and I was told again that, they played Straight to Hell better than the Clash. I'm like, well, that's very true, because the Clash, anyone who saw them will remember, didn't sound as slick as they did on their records, but these guys just sounded like someone had literally put the record on and played it. And the audience at these things, for a start, as I said, they're all large and middle-aged and mostly blokes. And whenever I've been to see these kind of things, you get a hell of a lot of people telling you to shush up and don't dance or don't spill your drink. Or where does it all go wrong for these guys? They might as well go to the opera.
Worse than that, Robin, was that I must admit, I'll hold my hand up to this, that I went to the first comeback gig for the Specials. And it was, a lot of fat, mostly old guys. The biggest problem was that they'd been out and probably had sort of like 4 or 5 pints, as they would have done in 1979 before they went to see them.
But they can't handle it anymore.
No, they were all over the place. And, and their jeans were hanging down around their backsides, and all you could see was their Athens tenor care pads hanging out the worst. You're just thinking, I hope this man doesn't start leaking around me. Do you know what I mean?
This is another issue. This is something that's occurred to me. Like, I've been to see some gigs where there's been a clear smell, and I've thought, wait a minute, I'm one of the youngest people here, and I'm not exactly in the first flush of youth. And these are people who in the old days say they're over 60, and they would have been at home with their pipe and slippers, wouldn't they, watching Morecambe and Wise? But they've carried on going to these concerts, and they're beginning to, I'm sure it is anal leakage.
Yeah, they've put the pad on, the super tight double pad, thinking that that's going to do them. But obviously they've had to go to the loo because they've had 2.5 pints of lager and have got a bit squiffy. And it's all getting a bit tricky.
The other thing is they're dragging along extra generations. So I heard some guy in a radio phone in complain it was about ticket prices, and he was going, never mind the price. He said you could never get a ticket for a concert because they sell out, and if it goes on sale at 9 a.m, they sell out by 5 past.
10 seconds, 10 seconds later.
There's a reason for that, because this guy himself was talking about Deep Purple or someone like that, saying, I want to, and I'm saying, when you went to see them in the 70s, it was only your generation that went. Now there's you your kids and your grandkids, and you're dragging them all along to see them.
Yeah, quite possibly your great-grandchildren.
There's three times as many people wanting to see them. I mean, the thing about all this is, what is this all about? I mean, I was thinking, is it about, like you said, with the Bay City Roller singles, or going to see the Sweet, is it about recovering lost innocence?
Absolutely.
But that's innocence. Innocence is a bit overrated, isn't it? Isn't it better to rid yourself of your childish delusions?
I was thinking that, and originally I agreed with you, Robin, and this is why this nostalgia thing is such a rich vein of gold. It's nostalgia for the time when you were 16, you weren't locked into a world of mortgages, disappointments in work and in life, marriage failures, and all this sort of stuff. But, for an hour and a half, you can go and listen to your Bay City Rollers or whatever.
We picked the wrong example there, Sean. I don't think this is... Who's listening to that?
Nobody. But what I'm saying is, it's not about whoever it is. It's about whatever age you were when you were 16 plus, and the world seemed like a better place, possibly.
I think you're right, because I noticed I suppose it's an issue when the magazines cover these elderly types. They don't actually have any current pictures of the artists.
Well, who'd want to look at that?
I mean, I guess it's not a problem for the Beatles or Pink Floyd because they haven't been going for ages. But, I mean, the new Uncut has got Patti Smith, and they've just blatantly stuck on a picture from about 50 years ago of her in 1976 or something. And the only current pic of her in a sort of 8-page article or something is absolutely tiny. And, what are the reasons for that? Is it... I mean, there could be sort of profound reasons for it, couldn't there? But
I'll give you a profound reason for it. Why is it that, not that you or I would do this, but if you're on Tinder, why do people put up so many throwback pictures of themselves while pretending it's them now?
As always, I think Viz Comic kind of summed all this up really well in a single joke, where they had a sort of fake write-in reader's column called "Are They Still Young?" It was poignant. Basically, it was entitled, "Are They Still Young?" And the readers supposedly had written in to say they'd been a big fan of Kim Wilde, say when she did Kids in America in 1983 or whatever. And is she still young?
Oh, definitely.
And then the expert, would reply somewhat sort of apologetically that no, owing to, laws of biology and physics and so on, I'm afraid not. It was very sad, because I think there's still a sort of thing of that, and those young pictures of people on the front covers kind of reflect that, don't they?
I had a terrible moment once. I was in Las Vegas, obviously for gambling after the Breeders' Cup, and got a chance to go and see a Cher show, and I thought, this could be a bit of fun. It's camp, entertaining, all the rest of it. And I was watching the show, and she's very funny, got a good sense of humour, but was still wearing these outfits that she was when she was holding back time or turning back time, whatever it was.
Don't have a problem with that. She's got every right to.
I have no problem with it at all, except I found myself thinking, she's looking quite hot, really.
I've got a problem with that.
And then I realised well, exactly, and I had to catch myself on a little bit, Robin.
I mean, there's a problem with age in general, isn't there? I've noticed in a lot of reviews of young artists, because I still like to listen to a lot of new music, and I've noticed these reviews saying things...
What, like Blur?
No, I've actual new music, which we won't go into now because it's only going to bore you. But a lot of the reviews now of new artists have got these lines in them saying, like, she's only 19 or he's only 20. And thinking, what a load of complete arse, right? New artists have always been that age. It's not surprising.
No.
Unless we missed some sort of era when artists started coming out age 40 with grey beards. It's the journalists who've got old. And they need to hand it over to younger journalists.
Yes. Well, you've got to keep paying the mortgage, Robin, don't forget.
That's the problem, isn't it? I'm tired out with nostalgia.
Well, I was just going to say, this whole thing is all pervasive. So just before we sat down to do this, I was watching the telly. Usual string of adverts on there, one of which was quite interesting, and it made me think about, Nick Cayman doing his Levi's advert in the 80s. Lou Reed, Take a Walk on the Wild Side, for a Seat SUV. Now, I'm pretty sure that when Lou Reed was writing and performing this sort of stuff, he wasn't thinking of driving around some nondescript glass city in a Seat SUV.
Exactly. And that's a good way to wrap it up, because unknown to a lot of Lou Reed fans probably, one of the last things he wrote was, not talking about songs, but a long article on a music website about how good Kanye West's Yeezus album was and why this guy was doing stuff that's new in music and exciting. And yet his fans are the sort of people who put comments on Kanye West articles saying, he's rubbish. I've never listened to one of his songs, but he's rubbish. And this is the problem. There's a Miles Davis piece in Uncut about a lost album that's been refurbished. And one of the artists who worked on the album says he embraced the new right to the end. Apart from Miles and David Bowie, how many guys have ever done that? Oh, sorry, mate. Loads have. It's just that you stopped listening to them after David Bowie.
It's a little bit telling when somebody says that.
Anyway, I think that's enough nostalgia, Sean.
Okay.
What do you think?
Well,
or are you still hankering after more?
I might, after this, I might go and wallow in maybe some Screamadelica, or maybe, as you reminded me earlier, of ABC, Lexicon of Love, in its entirety.
I'm going to go and listen to some shoeshine music by Glenn Hughes era Deep Purple. And on that note, we'll say goodbye to nostalgia and goodbye to the listeners. But we'll be back soon, not with nostalgia, but with some modern history.
Ooh, okay. David
Cameron and his comeback.
Yes. This has been, he's launching a new book. Like, I was reading a bit about it in the Sunday Times. It's going to be interesting, and I'm looking forward to it.
I prefer to go with the various people on Twitter who retweeted the line of David Cameron has been silent for over 3 years now, and they added to it, and haven't we enjoyed that? But we'll see, and we'll be back with that soon.
Cheers, thanks for listening.
Okay, thanks for listening, and goodbye.